All right, everybody, welcome back. The potatofication of one Joe Rogan. Man, this guy, so COVID broke Joe Rogan's brain. I used to listen to his podcast occasionally before COVID hit, depending on who his guests were. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background on that, and then I'm going to talk to you about what forced him to get into politics in 2024. And it's the most ridiculous shit you've ever heard in your life. So I remember the last time before COVID that I listened to Joe Rogan. It was sometime in January or February 2020. He had a guy on named Dr. Michael Osterholm, who is a doctor. I can't remember his specific area of practice, but at the time, in the 2 or 3 months leading up to the COVID shutdown, Dr. Michael Osterholm was all over cable news as an authority on infectious diseases and what was coming, what we could expect, what was actually happening overseas, all of that kind of stuff. And he got himself blackballed because of an appearance on the Joe Rogan podcast a month or so before everything shut down in March of 2020. Not because he appeared on Joe Rogan, but because of what he said on that Joe Rogan podcast. And it was like an hour and a half long, and it was an absolutely fascinating discussion. But what Dr. Osterholm said during that podcast was that this was going to shut everything down. It was going to last for a couple of years, and it could kill up to 600,000 Americans. And everybody across cable news lost their collective mud and said that he was fear-mongering. And so all the shows stopped having him on. Here we are 4.5 years later. Now, during that discussion as well, it's like when I heard him say that, I mean, he was somebody that I trusted, and he was somebody who people that I trust also trusted. That's when I really started thinking about, okay, this is going to disrupt absolutely every aspect of our lives, and started to think ahead of like, okay, how do we get ready for this? And I shared that podcast with a lot of people where I was working at the time because, we had to make plans for the office and things like that. And but during that same discussion, they spoke at great length about the miracle of vaccines and vaccinations. And Joe Rogan talked about how miraculous vaccines were, and that his kids were vaccinated, and that he trusts vaccines and vaccinations and the science and all of this stuff. And what a gift from God, in science, vaccines and vaccinations were. And that was like a month before everything shut down for COVID. And after everything shut down for COVID, Joe Rogan became a potato. He and Aaron Rodgers both became potatoes. Joe Rogan, famously was taking ivermectin, things like that. I don't know if Joe Rogan ever got vaccinated, but COVID really truly seems to have broken his brain and turned him into a potato. And Aaron Rodgers very famously said, when somebody said, "Have you been vaccinated?" he said, "I'm inoculated," whatever the hell that means to Aaron Rodgers. But ladies, if you're looking for a man, find yourself a man who loves himself as much as Aaron Rodgers loves Aaron Rodgers, or a man who loves you as much as Aaron Rodgers loves Aaron Rodgers. I mean, here's the thing about Aaron Rodgers, man, and I think this is why he and Joe Rogan get along so well. It doesn't matter what room he's in. Aaron Rodgers, in his mind, he has to be the smartest person in that room, which very often reveals that he's actually the dumbest person in that room, regardless of what that room is. But, all right, so let's get to the 2024 election. So it's like, I used to listen to Joe Rogan when his shows were like that, when he had really interesting guests on and they had really interesting conversations. But that was 4.5 years ago. That ain't his show today. And another point that I wanted to make, when Trump was making the rounds on all of these bro podcasts, and Rogan and Theo Von and Jake Paul and all of these guys, I mean, what's one of the number one things that you hear out of the MAGA base, the QAnon MAGA base? There's this cabal that's sex trafficking children all over the planet. And we have to do everything to root out the child sex traffickers and, Hillary Clinton and Comet Pizza and with the basement and, frazzle drip. If you've never heard the Hillary Clinton frazzle drip thing, just Google frazzle drip Hillary Clinton. It'll blow your mind. But these people who are utterly consumed with protecting children from the Hollywood elites and Democratic pedophiles that are sex trafficking them all over the planet and drinking their adrenochrome, what is another thing that they really want? They really want all of the evidence in the Jeffrey Epstein case to come out. They really want all of that evidence in the Jeffrey Epstein case. In every single one of those bro podcasts, and a lot of these guys have talked about Jeffrey Epstein on repeated occasions. All of these bro podcasters had Trump for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours in Rogan's case. Not one single one of them asked him a single question about Jeffrey Epstein or the fact that Jeffrey Epstein had been Donald Trump's best friend for 15 years in West Palm Beach and in Manhattan. Not one of them asked him one single fucking question about Jeffrey Epstein. Not one. And that's the difference between a bro podcast and journalism. Yeah. So, what forced, compelled Joe Rogan to get into the 2024 election and endorse Donald Trump? He said on a podcast episode last week that it would have been nuts to allow Tim Walz to become vice president. I wanted to stay out of the presidential election shit because it's so gross, but I felt like I had to. I felt like this is so nuts. When that Tim Walz guy, it's so nuts that guy was going to be vice president. You're telling me this whole thing is fake then? You're telling me that you don't care if someone is a liar? You don't care if they lied about their military rank when they served? He didn't. You don't care if they lie about Tiananmen Square? He didn't. There's too many things. This is so crazy. You would get fired if you were an assistant manager at a fucking oil change company. Jiffy Lube would fire you. What is he talking about? So, when Tim Walz retired, he had achieved a certain rank. And from what I read, I'm not military. I never served in the military. If you want to retire at the rank that Tim Walz had reached and maintain that rank in retirement, once you attain that rank, you have to wait 3 years before you retire. If you retire before you've had that rank for 3 years, when you do retire, you go down a rank. It's not a demotion. It's not a punishment. Those are just the rules that they have. And I think it has to do with pensions. If you want to hit, because it's like, then everybody, once they hit that rank, would automatically just retire and say, okay, give me my pension for that rank. The military gives you that rank, recognizing that it carries a much higher pension with it. And they're like, okay, but if you want to retire at that rank, you have to serve at that rank for 3 years before you retire. And Tim Walz didn't. He decided to retire after serving in the National Guard for 24 frickin' years. Joe Rogan never served. He's never been in the military. And so that is Joe Rogan saying that Tim Walz lied about his military rank. The whole Tiananmen Square, that was Tim Walz misremembering the dates of when he had been in China. He did go to China, and he'd been there for quite a while. He thought that overlapped with Tiananmen Square, and he was wrong. It's not like he said, I went to Tiananmen Square and saved Chinese people. He said, I happened to be there when that occurred. He was wrong about that because it was 25 years ago. That was in 1999. And there was another thing where Walz said that he was talking about guns and military-style assault rifles, saying that he had carried a weapon in war during his decades-long career in the National Guard. While Walz did not carry a weapon in war, he did serve in Europe as part of a security force amid the war in Afghanistan. And Tim Walz acknowledged that, and he was like, I misspoke. I didn't mean to say that. So because of those quote unquote lies, according to Joe Biden or to Joe Rogan, that forced Joe Rogan to get into politics in 2024, and that forced him to endorse a convicted felon, an adjudicated rapist, someone who had been indicted 91 times in 4 separate jurisdictions, who tried to overturn the 2020 election, who incited an insurrection at the United States Capitol, who stole classified secrets and kept them at his club in Florida, unsecured, in the bathroom, in boxes. We've all seen the photos. And that forced him to endorse a candidate who ran an explicitly, unapologetically racist, misogynist, bigoted, transphobic presidential campaign because Tim Walz misspoke a couple of times. Here's the find out part. Rogan's remarks about the governor motivating him to back Trump were met with some backlash on social media, while several critics arguing that the president-elect has a far more prolific history of telling lies than Tim Walz. Fact check. Donald Trump is the biggest liar in American history. The Washington Post reported that Trump made a total of over 30,000 false statements, misleading claims during his time in office. Joe Rogan saying he had to endorse Trump after watching Tim Walz lie is the most damning indictment yet of Joe Rogan's slide into the disinformation echo chamber of far-right fascism. Does this colossal alpha asshole not know that Trump is the most prolific liar in American history? Trump lies 24/7 about things small and large. Lying doesn't bother Joe Rogan at all. This is just him making excuses for his own ideological bias. And Mehdi Hassan closes us out. Imagine pretending you voted for Trump because you were bothered by, checks notes, dishonesty. LOL. I love Mehdi Hassan. Everybody should follow his new news site, Zeteo, Zeteo, after he was fired by MSNBC for his Gaza coverage. He started an online news outlet called Zeteo, and he's doing great work over there. I recommend it to everybody. Thanks, everybody, for watching. If you like this video, please subscribe to our page. Click like on this video, interact, leave comments, those sorts of things. It helps our page grow. Thanks, everybody, for watching. I'll see you guys soon.